For my monologue, I will be speaking for or as Jack Merridew, the antagonist of Lord of the Flies. Throughout the book, we quickly figure out that Jack is very power-hungry, butting heads with the likes of Ralph and Piggy on many occasions. He will literally do anything to assume the role of chief, whether it's dehumanizing Piggy, challenging Ralph's leadership, or straight up becoming a savage. Even once he is given the title of chief, he has all the boys chase Ralph across the island in a sick manhunt to make sure nobody can threaten his position. Keep this in mind while I speak, because you might notice that some of the things Jack says might not be true. It is unlikely that he would admit to what he had done on the island to anyone once he returned to civilization. I don't want to talk about what happened on the island, but the adults want to know how he survived and why 2 kids died. Well, let me tell you, it was all because of me that most of us lived. My name is Jack Merridew. I was the chapter chorister, head boy, and I could sing C-sharp for the choir before we were stranded on the island. I was in charge of the hunters at first, but then I became chief when Ralph started listening to Piggy too much. Piggy is just a good-for-nothing fatty, so everyone started following me. At the start, we all did a vote to see who would be chief, Ralph or me. Ralph was elected because he called the meeting with the conch, which is stupid because only Piggy follows the conch rules. Whoever holds the conch speaks. I should have been chosen because I can sing in C-sharp, and because I can hunt. But I wasn't. Anyways, we all decided that we needed to find out if we were on an island, so I went along the beach with Ralph and Simon to find out. When we figured out that we were on an island by climbing the mountain, we returned to where all the other kids were waiting and told them for the news. From there we made a bunch of camp rules, like civilized boys. Then we figured we needed to find a way to be rescued. Ralph said his father was in the Navy, and that the Queen had a picture of the island somewhere, so we knew we were going to be rescued. To help them find us, we decided to start a fire on the mountain so that passing ships could see the smoke in the sky. When we all got to the mountain again, we collected a bunch of sticks and branches for the firewood. Then we used Piggy's specs and the sunlight to start the fire. This is how we kept the fire going all the time. We used Piggy's specs and then the sun. On the island, I didn't care much about the fire because hunting for meat was more important. Some people took care of the fire, while me and the other hunters hunted. We were really good hunters. We even painted our faces to look like the creepers and the rocks. We made branches into spears and stabbed the pigs with them. If they kept moving, we beat them until they stopped. Hunting was far more important than keeping the fire going or building shelters, because if we were all hungry, then who would go up on the mountain and start the fire in the first place? And who would build the shelters? Nobody. This is why Ralph wasn't a good chief. He listened to Piggy all the time, and he only cared for his huts and his fire. Nobody else likes Piggy, because he's fat and nobody cares about the bloody huts and the fire. The Biggins wanted meat, and meat is what I was getting. I should have been chief from the start. Ralph was no good. There was one time when I caught our first pig that Ralph was especially no good. Sam, Eric, and I showed him the first pig we killed, and he got mad at us because we had left the fire to go out. We missed a boat because of it, but the boat isn't important. We killed a pig and ate meat that night because meat is more important. We had so much fun killing the pig. I don't know why he had to go and make it sound like a bad thing. It was a little after this that word was going around that there was a beastie on the island. Now, I never believed that there was a beastie on the island at first, mostly because I had hunted all over the island and hadn't seen it at all yet, but also because it was the little ones who talked about it mostly. The little ones are nothing but crybabies and sissies. I was afraid sometimes too, but I put up with the fear just like all the other big uns. It wasn't fair that they got to cry and do nothing around camp. One day, Sam and Eric came back to camp saying they saw the beast. I knew that if we didn't act first, the beast would pick us off one by one, so I thought it would be best to hunt the beast first. Again, Ralph was more concerned about the fire, but he still helped to look for the beastie. That night, I saw the beastie, and so did Ralph. It was dark and hard to see, but it was moving, so it was living. After that, we went straight back to camp. The next day, I called a meeting and told everyone what was on my mind. Ralph wasn't a good chief. He said things like Piggy. He didn't know how to hunt, and he gave people orders without doing anything in return. So I decided to leave Ralph's group, and many of my hunter friends followed me. We elected to ignore the beast, to move on with our lives because we were strong hunters. We killed a pig and had a feast, inviting Ralph and his group to join us if they wanted some. He arrived with Piggy, and we all danced and ate and had fun. That is, until something crawled out of the bushes. We were all so scared that the beastie had come to finish us, so we all grabbed spears and killed it. It was only after that we realized that we hadn't killed the beastie, we had killed Simon. It had been dark, and the noise that came out of Simon's throat didn't sound like Simon. It wasn't our fault. We hadn't meant it. Ralph and Piggy left after that, and we all went to sleep. Me and my tribe made a base at Castle Rock, where we had guards and only people from the tribe was allowed in. We had meat almost every night and we had fun, all because I was chief and Ralph was not. One day Ralph came to Castle Rock with Piggy, Sam, and Eric. They said that we had stolen Piggy's specs, and we hadn't. When I was trying to explain this to them, even after they said they wouldn't leave without them, a rock had fallen off the edge of the cliff and killed Piggy. It was a freak accident. Nothing could be done about it. Then Sam and Eric joined my tribe, and Ralph ran. The next day, a fire had started on the island, and we all ended up on the beach, only to be rescued by an officer and his cutter. That leads me to now. It has been a few short days since we had been rescued, and it's a little bit strange to be back to civilization. I grew used to leading, and it sucks that I'm just a kid again, but at least now I can sleep in a warm bed instead of the hard ground. I feel bad for Piggy and Simon, especially Simon, but I am proud that I was strong enough to keep myself and my choir mates alive.
This is a journal entry that Ralph made on a boat going back to civilization after being rescued from the island. Ralph was the protagonist, and he was the one who wanted to keep a sense of civilization and law and order on the island. Me and the other boys had just gotten onto a boat after a Navy officer found us on the island. They came just in the nick of time too. I was being hunted by the other boys, and I must have fell and hit my head on something, because when I woke up, the officer was there looking at me. I'm so glad to be heading back to civilization, to home. I've been longing to get my hair cut, my teeth brushed, and even my nails cleaned. Or at least the ones I hadn't bitten at. All the boys were around me, still wearing their hunting makeup. Amongst all these men in uniforms, I thought how silly we must look. Being on that island was awful. At first I was alone, and I had no idea where I was. But then all us boys got together on the beach and had a meeting. I thought of the idea of naming a chief. I was shocked when everyone wanted me to be chief. I thought Piggy or Jack would have been chosen. Piggy with his intelligence, or Jack, who was seemingly the most obvious leader. But I didn't complain. After all, I am the one who found the conch, who had it, and who called the meeting in the first place. I won the election, and I decided to let Jack be in charge of the crier. I thought that the first thing we had to do was figure out if we were on an island. Jack, Simon, and I went on our little exploration, and we had a great time making our way through the jungle. I admit at first I was thrilled with being on the island, just exploring it with Jack and Simon, laughing, talking, and having fun. We were really like explorers. We discovered that we were on an island, and we were mostly sure it was uninhabited too. As chief, I told everyone that we have a great island with many things to live off of, and that until the grown-ups come, we would have fun and get rescued. I thought of the great idea of making a fire for if a ship were to pass by, it would notice us. But after the first few days, I began to realize just how, dire the situation was. Jack had annoyingly began to place more importance and interest on catching a pig instead of focusing on the fire or even building a shelter. I thought that we weren't making enough smoke to be seen and started to worry about if we'd ever be rescued, especially at this rate. At one point, we saw a ship passing by pretty far away. I saw from the beach that there was no smoke. I raced through the jungle to get to the fire to create more smoke, but when I got there, the fire wasn't even lit. I didn't even have Piggy's glasses to light a new fire, so I shouted and shouted and shouted for the ship to come back before it disappeared. But it did. I looked over the mountain and could see the crier, the twins, and of course Jack walking up the mountain chanting with a pig on a pole. When Jack came, I just stared at him and said the fire went out. He was too excited about killing a pig and found what I said irrelevant. All I wanted him to do was keep the fire running. First, he doesn't build huts like he said he would, then he lets the fire go out and goes hunting. I was so angry at him. I thought All he cared about was hunting when I cared about being rescued. After that, I really thought we were never going to be saved, but now I'm just glad that I'm going home. And I feel awful about how we lost three of the boys, including Simon and Piggy. What awful deaths they were, stabbed to death and hit by a gigantic rock. Even the little guy with the weird mark on his face. We never talked about that. I don't know why. I can see I can see land up ahead, civilization, society. My life on the island with almost savages is over. Soon we'll be ordinary, clean, well-cut English boys again, as I always hoped we would be.